Well, let's talk about this race because there's plenty to unpack for the Daytona 500. You and I were joking off camera about the poetic justice of 2311 capitalizing with the biggest win of the year. But this race overall just was a little different, would you say, than Daytona 500s we've seen in the past in terms of some of the way the stories were unfolding and pitting and all of that?
I think a lot of that unfolded differently because of the accidents.
Right.
Some of those accidents probably shouldn't have happened, but they always do. And it always seems like at the Daytona 500, you get those early things that happen. We had BJ have the right rear wheel, suspension, tire, whatever that situation was to spin out early. And then you had, the different accidents at strange times in the first two stages. And then the strategy really started to set in the third stage to position themselves. But at that time, we'd wiped a bunch of the Chevrolets out, a bunch of the guys that we thought might be contenders. And we wound up with a mixed-up field, which you can do there. And we've seen that happen over the now 68 races that we've had at the Daytona 500. So it was a very intriguing race. And I don't know how they come up with their strategy or anything, but I do. But I don't know why they played the strategy that they played because it was very odd.
Yes.
The way that everybody pitted in those small groups this time. And Ford kind of went away from their strategy of the two bigger groups to pit. So it was you had some guys that made it in the first stage. Zane Smith won the first stage and was able to stay out the whole time on his fuel and the fuel that he had saved and took the chance. I was not sure that they were going to make it. And for me, I think for guys that think that they can win, probably didn't want to take that chance. And I think some of those guys that thought that they could win by putting themselves in the right position and taking a chance earlier in the race, they were like, we're just going to do it. But it worked out for them, and they were able to get some stage points.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how they pit in the smaller groups, and then it was mixed too. Like I think Tyler Reddick,
teammates breaking off.
Yeah, teammates breaking off from each other. Tyler Reddick came down with the Fords. Like Denny didn't come down with the Toyotas. It was just a interesting thing. But then as it was unfolding and the pack was starting to get back together, it was like, oh, this is about to be big because there's a head of steam with about
meshing back together.
With like 15 cars that were strolling. And then at the end, you had like Logano and Blaney. They didn't have a great execution down pit road and off.
They were spread out. So then Blaney goes to the top to kind of give room, but like also to try and slow him down. And then Logano goes, there's only one thing I got to do. And he just puts it right in the middle and like really slows down the pack, and it all came back together. And that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
You just don't want that pack to be able to just stay single file, and you just want to break their momentum.
Yep.
So you start staggering those cars so that they can serpentine. Throughout the straightaway, because when those cars start zigging and zagging like that, then it breaks the draft for a second, and it slows the momentum of those cars down, because once you get up on the pipe like that, I mean, it really, those cars are making good speed, but it takes some pushing and shoving to get them up to that point of RPM. So if you can get that broken up like they did, it slows it down enough to where you can join that pack.
We've seen exceptional driving, though, out of Tyler Reddick at the end, and we've talked about it, just the struggles they had in 2025, both on track and in his personal life, obviously, with his son. But he was able to get the Daytona 500 win. I know you already spoke to him. That Victory Lap interview is available now. What did you take away from that?
Well, just how different it is this year, going into the season with everything that's not going on. We talk about who his biggest critics are. I told him my wife was always my biggest critic when I did something wrong or made a bad move, and sounds like it's very similar, but I don't know. I think that going through a year like Tyler and his family went through last year personally, it puts things in perspective in a different way. And we all go through those times of reality checks that mature you. As a person, hopefully you get more mature as you go through time. And typically, half the drivers are late to their interviews. And today, Tyler, I was sitting in the makeup room and getting ready for the show, and Tyler was 10 minutes early.
Very prompt.
What do you mean he's already on? But so I asked him, I said, man, you're on dad time, huh? He said, yeah. I needed to change some things that I do to really get my life in check and try to grow up and be more responsible and do things in a different way. And when I start hearing those conversations about people, that's when I'm like, okay, this guy's ready to really take control and be the leader. And when the driver's the leader, we always talk about the driver's personality is exactly how your team acts. And when the driver's early and the driver's on time to meetings and the driver's asking questions about how things are going, the driver's setting the example, the team takes on that personality. And I think that Tyler Reddick has a different vibe to him in that interview than what he has had in the past. And I think it's a relief, for him to have his family personal stuff situated, the 2311 stuff not being in a lawsuit this year. And he mentioned this, that they've had some hard conversations about things that they need to get better at. He also mentioned the road course stuff with SVG. He just threw out there the whole short track problem that they've had with the brakes and what they need to fix as a company. They've had some tough conversations, it sounds like to me, within that organization with this 45 team. And, Reddick being the one that is like, hey, I need to be a little better myself. And when you can start analyzing yourself by everybody else's critiquing you, it makes a big difference in who you are.
Yeah, he talked about, when you're racing in 2311, you're expected to win a lot. So last year was tough for them, but this is such an iconic moment, I think, to seeing Michael Jordan in victory lane at the Daytona 500 winning. He came into the sport obviously a number of years ago, but just having his presence there and what he's been able to bring to that organization, it's pretty neat to see that moment culminate together on the NASCAR stage.
If anyone had any question on if Michael Jordan loved NASCAR and what his intentions are here, that should be completely gone now. He is here to stay. He loves the sport. He's always loved the sport. And now he's a Daytona 500 champion, which is insane. And watching him and Tyler lift that trophy at the same time was like, this is a big moment.
Like a big moment,
and for Tyler, he's always been one of those guys that kind of his highs are high, and his lows sometimes I think are too low on himself. Like he
mentioned that.
Yeah, like he is very critical of himself and expects himself to do really well because of the people that support him and put the effort and the funding and the time. And you talk about it, and then you start thinking about, well, who else does it sound like? It sounds like his teammate Bubba.
Yeah.
And now you start looking at them both building their families and their personal lives and getting what Kevin always likes to talk about, that circle of life. Getting your circle of life locked in. And I think last year, Bubba really was able to do that. And it showed up on the racetrack because now that his home circle of life is exactly how he wants it, the at-track stuff was starting to come along because the pressures of at-track weren't as mounting because stuff at home was right. You know what I mean? And I love that, hearing that Tyler sounds like he's going down that same path. And I think those two guys can really, they're in the same time frame of life. They both have working on 2 kids, and married and the whole thing, and now trying to be big time.
When you say working on it, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, Tyler has 2. Bubba doesn't quite have 2.
In the works.
Yeah, I didn't know what you meant by working on it.
I know.
I just wanted to.
When there's a
see
bun
where
in
your head was at.
There's a bun in the oven. Like we're not, we're still cooking.
Okay.
We're still cooking.
Yeah.
So when we sat here before the season started, we did identify 2311 as one of the teams that we were curious how the offseason would have fared for them. And if we saw the improvement, what kind of statement do you think this makes?
Well, I want to go back a little bit to my favorite moment of victory lane and just how ironic this whole scenario is with NASCAR in 2311 because Jim France and Michael Jordan shaking hands and Jim France and Denny Hamlin shaking hands. That is really good for our sport.
It absolutely is.
For the fact that Jim France went to victory lane and the effort that they are putting in to just move forward and be happy for each other and work together. And as Michael Jordan said in his interview, communicate. It's all about communication. He mentioned it a couple times in his interview. Says a lot about us moving on.
You know what I find interesting? Front Row won the truck race. RCR, who was not involved in the lawsuit, but there was a piece that came out that involved him, won the Xfinity race, and 2311 won the Cup race.
Well, it's just funny how that all works.
Interesting.
I also, you guys talk about that, and then also like them being together. They work more together, like around each other from the business end, I think, more than NASCAR and other teams, because NASCAR is an official partnership with Mack, the semi and so does 2311. They announced their official partnership with Hardee's. So did 2311. It's just like you guys are all working together.
There's unity here.
However, regardless if you want to or not, you are in the same
sandbox.
building, in the same house together. So you might as well figure it out.
Anyway.
Well, I want to go back to that
backwards.
2311 piece of just what kind of statement you think this kind of makes about the improvements they potentially made in the offseason, because Bubba had a good race. Obviously, Tyler won. I mean, do you think that you've seen a positive change there?
Well, I mean, we put a lot of pressure on Tyler Reddick, and we talked about it a lot throughout the week, how he needs to win. You know, he went to 2311. The effort and everything that they put into 2311's cars and Toyota, all the things that happen over there are built to win. Michael Jordan expects to win. Denny Hamlin expects to win. Tyler Reddick expects to win. And, you know, if they don't go to victory lane, it becomes messy pretty quick, in my opinion. And I think that getting this win early, we saw Bubba running up front in the
Leading
qualifying
laps,
races, leading laps in the race. So Riley Herbst finished 8th, had a chance to be in contention.
Push Tyler to the win.
Get Tyler in position to win. Corey Heim led laps. And those are the expectations that they have at that organization. So for Tyler Reddick not to go to victory lane last year, we talk about this. We got to give them a mulligan with everything that they had personally and the lawsuit. And I mean, how can you ever get everything organized in a situation like that? But the mulligans are over. And first thing that they did was go to victory lane and win the sport's biggest race of the year. And that's already behind them. So I think that definitely takes some pressure off of them. Hearing Tyler talk about the things that they needed to work on and are working on, we'll have to wait and see if those results are there. But you know, they've won the Brickyard 400, they've won the Daytona 500 as an organization, and I think that they got off on the right foot, which is what they needed to do.
Adding a crown jewel,
Yeah, I think the way that they operate as a team unit, they really look at that as we have won 2 crown jewels, not Bubba won the Brickyard and Tyler won the Daytona 500. We, as a whole company, have put this together to do that, and you know they're locked in. But here's the thing: the point system is now the chase, so they got to stay locked in. Like there's no lifting out of the throttle. Like you can't. Like, yeah, you won the race, great, but you gotta continue this running up front
few days,
throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
Because if you revert, they will not make the chase.
And it's interesting to see which drivers are numbers guys and pay attention to the stats and all the things. Reddick mentioned it in our victory lap interview. He mentioned, you know, we scored the most points on the super speedways last year. They're already thinking about what they're good at and know that they need to get better at certain things, but he was very well aware of how many points and the way that this is all going. So he feels like it's his style. He's like, you know, I get the reputation of being the daredevil, taking chances, DNFs. He's like, that's not how we've raced the last few years. We've been piling up points, and so it was interesting to hear him think that he was in a good position for the new chase format.
We've talked about 2311 needing to get a win. We've also talked about it with RFK Racing, which obviously Ryan Preece had a very good performance at the Clash. But I was impressed with Brad Keselowski, who had a top 5 yesterday. We know he's going into the race sustaining an injury, walking with a cane even. But he's good on these style tracks. But I mean, I thought that showed a lot of strength there.
And you know, Preece was in a position, I thought, to be a contender on Sunday up until he wrecked that car. When he got out of that car on Saturday and talked about how slow it was and how it wasn't where it was before the accident, I thought that they were in trouble. Brad was always, I felt like he was in a good spot all week with his speed and his car and everything. And the 17 car, Chris Buescher, you know,
in a backup,
their backup car, he felt like it was better than his primary
which is
car.
wild to think about.
And so you never know exactly where the details of those cars are going to come out as far as how they perform on the racetrack when you unload them or fix them at the track. So, you know, I felt like Brad. I feel like he knows that there's limited opportunities for him to win the Daytona 500 again. I think going and getting back in the car was very motivating for him physically and personally to try to work hard enough to be in that position. So that's a tough scenario with an injury like that, where he broke his leg. So it's always interesting in our sport. I feel like injuries can be very motivating to get yourself in a better spot with things, but you also want to prove everybody wrong that you can be in that car. I think we'll know where Brad is when he gets to Coda as far as where his leg is. I think Daytona and Atlanta are best case scenario for his injury and everything that he has going on. But Coda is going to be extremely difficult, I believe, for Brad, and not their strength anyway.
Yeah.
As far as performance in the past, but we'll know exactly where Brad Keselowski is when we get to Coda.
Yeah. Shout out to RFK because they also added that fourth car that brought a lot of speed with
What a heartbreaker for Corey LaJoie.
Corey,
in the qualifying.
Yeah,
race,
in the
qual,
in the duels.
Don't know.
In the duels, did everything he needed to do to make the duels. Brad kind of shuffled, I think, Chandler Smith out of the way because we need to get our guy in here. And they were right there. They were doing it and just caught up in something. And it sucks because Corey has limited opportunities too. And I think he was really going into this race with how can I help RFK win? And I think that fourth car was really going to pay off for them. And they had all the speed. So if he made it to 500, I think he was going to be in the mix and being able to help the team, win that thing. So I felt bad for them. But for them to bring a fourth car and that all the cars have speed, I think that means a lot. That means their processes are right and they're heading in the right direction because before, when they brought fourth cars, it was kind of a non-factor.
I always looked at super speedway racing as a good judge of where our organization was at KHI because speedway racing is all about processes. And if those cars didn't qualify wherever in the field, 1, 2, 3, 4, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, then you knew if one was first and one was 30th, something's wrong in the shop.
The system. Yeah,
because the details of your organization show up at speedway racing. Unless you had a choice in the shop, and even if you did make a choice in the shop, now you can go back and analyze those situations of your processes and the decisions that your team made or the teams made and understand. But super speedway racing to me shows you how much an organization is put together by how close their cars qualify to each other.
You mentioned qualifying. One neat story from qualifying was Justin Allgaier racing his way into the Great American Race, showing a lot of promise at one point, but ultimately causes a very big accident on lap 124 involving 17 cars. How did this change the complexion of the race at that point, and what did you see from Justin?
Well, it massively changed everything that was happening right here. And I think that Justin was kind of just in no man's land and then tried to fix it with a late block, which he took full responsibility for after the race. But this was just an error by Justin. He left the door open too much and then tried to close it when Denny Hamlin was already there, but took a lot of contenders out of the race at this particular moment and changed the complexion of the whole event right there with that mistake.
Do you think some of that is inexperience in a cup car in these situations, or just
absolutely? Yeah. I think that the cadence of how the draft works and everything that goes with cup racing is just different than the O'Reilly series and the things that they do there. So it's I don't want to. It's one of those scenarios when you don't do it every week. It's hard to do and understand exactly how everybody does it.
Yeah.
Especially when you're at the front.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get in those controlling the race type scenarios. How you control an O'Reilly race is way different than how you control a cup race.
Yeah, and he's racing with the best in the world at this. And, obviously in the O'Reilly series, that's not the case. And, the moves that these guys make are a little bit more aggressive and they're tighter windows. And because they're used to racing with people that understand that, okay, I left you too much here. I got to concede this position. Whereas in the other series, both of them, trucks and O'Reilly's, guys aren't going to take those as tight windows because, they're unsure. They're less experienced.
And we saw the same thing out of Connor Zillage.
Yeah.
It was just sloppy, right? And that sloppiness comes from inexperience in those scenarios and just understanding the things that happen. So you see Connor's accident right there. You see him get in the door. But the first thing that does is it starts making the cars behind you move around and check up. And those are the types of things that cause accidents. When you make a late move or a bad move, they have repercussions that are different than what you've been racing. So both of them, will obviously learn from those scenarios and, get better as they move forward.
I will say the turbulent air off of 4 and just how it flattens out, like a lot of things happen.
Well, the wind was blowing 1,000,000 miles an hour.
That was crazy,
and I didn't know that. I don't know if we ever officially recognized that it was the windiest Daytona 500 in history. But it was 3 and 4, the center of 3 and 4 to the exit are the trouble spots on the racetrack. And I think that this scenario kind of started right off of turn 4 with Zilich and wound up wrecking and going into the tri-oval. But it all started back there. And with the direction that the wind was blowing at the start of the race, right towards turn 4, it just amplified that.
Everyone at Trackhouse should be, by the way, I want to give them a quick shout out. They should be happy about what they put on track because they have, SVG has a limited amount of speedway racing experience. Connor has virtually none in the Cup Series, and their cars were fast and they ran up front. And they did up until that part exactly what they want to do. So.
Once those big incidents took place, then with 20 to go, the pit cycles began. We kind of touched on it briefly of these much smaller groups coming to pit road. I know we have some footage of that. What do you think was the rationale behind
I have no idea.
Groups?
I think that they should.
Curious to know.
They would probably go back and try to do it differently. But it seemed the whole strategy thing seemed very scattered throughout the day as to how they pitted, when they pitted, who they pitted with. And totally unorthodox from the things that we've seen in the past. So I never really got a good reason as to why it went the way that it did, but it was very disorganized.
And then towards the end of the race, there were actually 2 incidents on the final lap. Chase Elliott looking like he was in position at one point to get a 500 win. What did you see from all of that?
Well,
unfolding?
I do want to give a shout out to NASCAR before we start because I didn't really know how this was going to go, and they were consistent in how they called all 3 races, all the races this weekend by not throwing the caution if the car wasn't heavy impact and giving those cars a chance to get going, letting cars with flat tires drive around the racetrack. I don't care how you call it, as long as it's consistent.
That's it.
And they were consistent all weekend, and I appreciate that, and I think it comes across a lot better. But on this last lap here, at one point I thought Hocevar, when they took the white flag, I'm like, Hocevar is going to win this race. And then they wiped out, and then I'm like, oh, is the caution surely going to come out because of all the cars that wrecked, and I didn't see the impact and everything that happened. And then I'm like, oh, Stenhouse, he's going to win the race because the caution's going to come out and he's leading. And then I realized the caution's not coming out. Chase Elliott's going to win the race because
he's got all the car length.
He's got all the car lengths, and then all of a sudden, here comes Tyler Reddick with a massive run off of turn 4 and winds up winning the race. So there was just and we had a great video of Jeff Gordon up on top of the
just about to say that.
Of his up and down emotions of everything that happened there at the finish of the race. So great week, great finishes. Our Daytona 500 started on time and ended on time. Made some great decisions by starting the race early with the weather. And ultimately, we had one of the guys that we had pinned as a guy who needed to make something happen in Tyler Reddick as our Daytona 500 champion.
Yeah.
A lot of positives here I'm hearing, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just great. I almost tweeted while they were coming to the white. No, coming to the white.
So let me ask you this: is it a tweet or is it? I mean, how do you call a post on X? Is it still a tweet?
It's just a post.
It's just a post, but
that's how my brain's working today. It's just randomness, stuff that really doesn't matter that can just screw the show up and make it
better though. It just always felt
full of no information about anything that has anything to do with racing.
This is like over here, Grandpa over here with his
face on it.
with his face on it. I thought that for sure Spire had it because I'm like, oh. Well, they'll control 2 lines, and then they'll probably be able to manipulate the rest of this. And then that just didn't happen, getting down into 1. It lasted for about half the track. They got down to 1, and all hell broke loose. And the move that William Byron and Bubba did to not wreck, because William is under the apron, getting into turn 1, has to get back on the racetrack, find his way to the middle, and Bubba sees him and is able to lift enough to not wreck the rest of the field because they were already wrecking behind him. And then Chase Elliott, so you're sitting storyline, you're like, oh, well, this is going to be the biggest storyline. Like, how could it be much bigger? And then at the end of it being Michael Jordan and Tyler Reddick, again, huge plug to Riley Herbst for pushing Reddick and getting him that run and making sure that they were able to secure the 500. It was, what a finish. Unreal.
It was a great finish. We still have a little more time to talk about the 500, so we want to hand out I would like to say something about Corey Heim, obviously. I know you touched on him briefly, but we knew what he could do in the Truck Series. That was very obvious. But to come to Daytona and lead laps like that, I think like he's just solidifying that he belongs in that series already.
Well, right now he's got 12 Cup races. I wish they'd find 36.
I don't know what.
Yeah. I just, he dominated the Truck Series last year. I mean, he fits right in. I mean, he made a mistake, pushing on the back of Denny's car, but you got to be in it to learn it.
And 3 and 4 too, where we talked about
and you got to be in these things to learn it. But his racing IQ is high. Mm-hmm. He's a Cup driver in the making, just in an odd scenario that he's not getting a full-time opportunity to go out and do that on a weekly basis. But I think he did a good job. All of our rookies, I would put Allgaier in that category as well. He hasn't been in a Cup car, but once last year and once this year, and so they all three made mistakes, and ultimately that's what's going to happen in order to learn the things that you need to learn. But when you're doing it at the front of the pack, it's high criticism, but it's all high. It should be some high praise as well because you're there.
That's a great way to phrase it.
You are at the front of the pack. Take some heat for it, but that's the only way to learn.
When I interviewed Tony, he was like, he's like, I know about as little as any other rookie in this field, in the truck field, because I haven't driven these things and I haven't been on the super speedway. And he was like, and so I might be the caution. Yeah. And he was explaining, but like
he was,
and he ended up being the caution, not by his doing, but he was. And like the thing about that he said that I think I wish more people would say, and so our fans could understand it. Like people are gonna wreck. Like the young guys are going to wreck. That doesn't mean they're not good race car drivers.
Old guys are going to wreck too.
The old guys are going to wreck too. Yeah. It doesn't mean they're not good. It just means they need more time to figure it out. And Tony's like, I destroyed so much shit in 1999.
Yeah.
On my way to becoming 3-time champion and one of the best that we've ever seen. So like, it's part of the process.
Did you hear the pre-race interview?
No.
You haven't heard it?
No. Because
we gotta find it.
On the midway.
His daycare line.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, Clint, Joey and I interviewed Clint. Jesus,
it's been a long speed week.
It has. It was a long week.
It's okay. You'll get it out eventually.
Friday, myself and Joey did the in-truck interview with Tony Stewart, and it was hilarious.
Okay,
and so he said he felt like I think he said something along the lines of being the daycare owner, head of the daycare for all the kids at the school. So
it is weird. It probably was weird for him because like everyone in Cup, like he raced with their dads for the most part, except a couple of them, and so he saw them grow up, and now the guys that he was racing with in truck potentially weren't even born yet when he's in there. Like,
and I'm sure we could go back and find it, but his dash, the numbers were that big on the RPM.
He said he can't see it.
Well, if he couldn't see that, he has
can't make
big
it
issues
much bigger.
Because the first thing that we saw on TV from way back in the cab was how many RPMs the truck had going on. So I'm sure he wanted it that way to get down pit road for his pit road speed, but it was fun just having him in the race and giving him grief about everything is even more fun.
He was racing with glasses, but they had I guess you look at the bottom and it changes versus the top, and so that's what he was struggling with.
He wore his progressives?
No, well, he just got his new ones in for the race. So he had his progressives before that.
So he was using his progressives down pit road. Maybe he couldn't see them because the font was too big.
Giant font for Tony Stewart.